The phone rang at 2:34 in the morning, I know, because I was staring at the digital clock on my nightstand, unable to sleep, thinking about my daughter-in-law Rebecca and the strange conversation we'd had earlier that day when I picked up a nurse's calm but urgent voice said, "Mrs. Harrison, this is Memorial Hospital. Your son Thomas has been in an accident. You need to come right away." My heart stopped. My hands went numb and I couldn't breathe. Thomas, my only son, the boy I had raised alone after. His father died when he was just 6 years old. I threw on whatever clothes I could find, my fingers shaking so badly I could barely button my shirt, and I drove through the empty, dark streets to the hospital. The whole time one thought kept circling. In my mind, like a vulture, where was Rebecca? Why hadn't she called me? Why was it the hospital calling instead of my daughter-in-law? And why at 2:34 in the morning was my son in an accident, alone, without his pregnant wife? My name is Margaret Louise Harrison. I'm 62 years old, and until that phone call at 2:34 a.m., I thought I knew my family. I thought I understood my son's marriage. I thought the roundness of Rebecca's belly and the glow in her cheeks and the way she'd been acting for the past 7 months was just a woman carrying her first child. Everyone said pregnant women get emotional. Right, everyone said it was normal for them to want privacy, to need space to change their routines, to become secretive about certain things. But I was wrong, so terribly, horribly, catastrophically wrong. And what I discovered in the days and weeks that followed that middle-of-the-night phone call would destroy everything I believed about the people I loved most in this world. It would force me to quite literally dig up secrets that had been buried in my son's backyard. It would make me question my own sanity, my own perception of reality, my own ability to see what was right in front of me. And it would teach me that sometimes the most dangerous lies are not the ones other people tell us, but the ones we tell ourselves, because we want so desperately to believe that everything is fine, that our family is normal, that the people we love are exactly who we think they are. When I arrived at Memorial Hospital, the fluorescent lights were so bright they hurt my eyes. Or maybe that was just the tears I had been fighting back during the entire 20-minute drive. A young doctor with exhausted eyes and a coffee stain on his white coat approached me in the emergency room waiting area. "Mrs. Harrison," he asked, and I nodded, unable to speak. Unable to form words because my throat was closed with fear. "I'm Dr. Mitchell. Your son was brought in about an hour ago. There was a single vehicle accident on Route 47 near the old Millers Creek Bridge. A passing truck driver saw the wreckage and called 911. But is he alive?" I finally managed to choke out. "Please tell me he's alive." "Yes, Mrs. Harrison. He's alive," Dr. Mitchell said, and I felt my knees buckle with relief. "He has a fractured left leg in 2 places, 3 broken ribs, a severe concussion, and significant bruising. But he's going to recover. He was very, very lucky. The car went off the road and down an embankment. If he hadn't been wearing his seatbelt, or if the airbag hadn't deployed, or if that truck driver hadn't come along when he did, the outcome would have been very different. Lucky." The word tasted wrong in my mouth, bitter and metallic. How was my son lucky that he had crashed his car in the middle of the night on a road that nobody used anymore, a road that had been closed for construction for the past 4 months? What was he even doing out there? "Dr. Mitchell," I asked, trying to steady my voice, trying to sound calm, even though I felt like I was falling apart. "Route 47 has been closed. Why was Thomas driving there and where?" And I stopped myself from asking the question that was really burning in my mind. Where was Rebecca? Dr. Mitchell shifted uncomfortably and looked down at his clipboard. "Mrs. Harrison, when the paramedics arrived at the scene, your son was conscious but extremely agitated. He kept saying he had to get away. He kept repeating, 'I had to get away from her. She lied to me. She lied about everything.' And when we asked him who he was talking about, he just said my wife, and then he lost consciousness. From what I understand, he regained consciousness here in the ER, but he's been sedated now for the pain. You can see him, but he won't be fully awake until morning." I followed Dr. Mitchell through a maze of identical corridors, everything white and sterile and smelling of disinfectant and something else underneath. something that smelled like fear and death and desperation. Thomas was in a room at the end of the intensive care wing, surrounded by beeping machines and hanging IV bags and monitors, showing his heart rate and blood pressure and oxygen levels, when I saw him lying there, my beautiful boy, with his face swollen, and bruised and stitched his left leg in a cast, suspended by some kind of metal contraption. His chest wrapped in bandages. I felt like someone had reached into my chest and ripped out my heart. I pulled a chair close to his bed, took his right hand, the one that wasn't connected to tubes and IVs, and I cried. Not the quiet, dignified crying you see in movies, but ugly, desperate sobbing, where you can't catch your breath and your nose runs and you make sounds you didn't know you could make. "Oh, Thomas," I whispered. "What happened to you? What were you running from? What did Rebecca do?" He didn't answer. Of course he was unconscious, sedated, floating somewhere between sleep and pain. And I sat there holding his hand, watching the machines measure. His life in beeps and numbers and glowing green lines. And that's when I remembered, where was Rebecca? I pulled out my phone with my free hand and called her cell. It rang once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, and went to voicemail. I tried again. Same thing. I tried their home phone. No answer. I sent a text. "Thomas is in the hospital car accident. He's alive, but hurt badly. Where are you?" The message showed delivered, but not read. I tried calling again and again, and with each unanswered ring, a cold. Feeling started in my stomach and spread through my entire body, like ice water in my veins. Something was wrong. Something was very, very wrong. I stayed with Thomas all night, dozing in that uncomfortable hospital chair, jerking awake every time a nurse came in to check his vitals, every time a machine beeped, every time he moaned. In his sleep, the sun came up, slowly pale winter light, filtering through the blinds, and around 7 a.m. Thomas started to stir, his eyes fluttered open, unfocused and confused. And when they finally found me and recognized me, I saw something in them I had never seen before, not when his father died. Not when he broke his arm falling out of a tree when he was 9, not even when his first girlfriend broke his heart. When he was 16, what I saw in my son's eyes was pure terror, raw and genuine and absolute. "Mom," he whispered, his voice rough and scratchy. "Mom, you have to check the garden." "What, Thomas? What are you talking about?" "The garden behind the house, Rebecca. You have to see." He winced in pain, his hand going to his ribs. "Don't talk, sweetheart," I said, leaning closer. "You're hurt. We can talk about this laterno," he said more urgently, trying to sit up and gasping with pain. "No, you don't. Understand, you have to go there. Now you have to see what she did." "Mom, there's no baby. There was never a baby." The world tilted, the room spun, and I felt like the floor had disappeared beneath my feet. "What do you mean? There's no baby. Rebecca is 7 months pregnant. I can see it. We all can see it. Everyone can see it. She's huge. Her belly is. It's not real." "Mom, none of it is real," Thomas said, and tears started running down his bruised face, streaking through the dried blood that the nurses hadn't quite cleaned away. I found the fake belly in our closet, the pregnancy prosthetic, the thing she's been wearing. And when I confronted her, when I asked her what the hell was going on, she just looked at me with these dead, empty eyes and said, "You weren't supposed to find out yet." Not yet. I couldn't process what I was hearing. Couldn't make sense of the words coming out of my son's mouth. Rebecca had been pregnant. We had gone to doctor's appointments together. Well, one appointment early on, she said the doctor preferred privacy. After the first trimester that seemed reasonable, at the time we had thrown her a baby shower. Just 2 weeks ago, I had bought a crib and a changing table and more baby clothes than any infant could possibly need. I had converted my spare bedroom into a nursery. Painted it yellow because they were keeping the gender a surprise. I had spent hours and hours knitting baby blankets and booties and hats. "Thomas, that's impossible," I said, but my voice sounded weak. Even to my own ears. I've seen her belly. I've seen it grow. I've watched her change over the past 7 months. It's real. It has to be real. It's not Mom, he said. It's padding. It's foam. It's a prosthetic that women wear when they're faking pregnancies. I didn't even know such things existed until I found it hidden under her sweaters in the back of the closet. And Mom, that's not even the worst part. What could possibly be worse than that? I asked, what else could there be? The garden, he said, his grip on my hand tightening. You have to check the garden behind the shed, near that big oak tree. She's been digging there almost every night for the past 2 months. I thought she was planting something. Thought maybe she was. Making a garden for the baby, something to do while she was on maternity leave. But now I know, now I understand. It's not a garden. Mom, it's something else. Something bad. What do you mean, something bad? Thomas, what are you saying? I don't know exactly. He said, I didn't want to look, didn't want to dig up whatever she buried, because I was afraid. I was so afraid of what I would find. But Mom, you have to go there. You have to see what she's done, and you have to be careful. Be very, very careful around Rebecca, because I don't think she's who we thought she was. I don't think she's been herself for a long time. Maybe she never was. Maybe we never really knew her at all. A nurse came in, then checking the monitors that were beeping more frantically, adjusting his IV, pushing more pain medication into his line, and Thomas's eyes started to droop, started to close. Mr. Harrison, you need to rest, the nurse said firmly. You're going to hurt yourself if you don't calm down. Your blood pressure is too high. Your heart rate is elevated. You need to let the medication work before he drifted off. Thomas looked at me one more time, his eyes desperate, pleading the garden. Mom, promise me you'll check the garden and whatever. You do? Don't tell Rebecca that, don't let her see that you suspect anything. I don't know what she's capable of. I don't know what she'll do if she thinks her secret is out. I promise, I whispered. I promise I'll be careful. And then he was asleep again, and I was left sitting there with my mind racing with 1,000 questions and no answers, with my stomach churning with fear and dread, with the terrible knowledge that I had to go to my son's house. I had to go to the garden, and I had to see what Rebecca had buried there. I drove to Thomas and Rebecca's house in a fog, barely seeing the road, barely registering the other cars, the traffic lights, the familiar streets. Their house was a modest 2-story colonial in a quiet neighborhood. The kind of place where people knew their neighbors, where kids played in the front yards, where nothing bad was supposed to happen. Rebecca's car was in the driveway, her silver Honda that she had bought 2 years ago when she got her promotion. At the accounting firm where she worked, I sat in my car for a long moment just staring at that house, at the cheerful red front door that Rebecca had painted last spring, at the flower boxes under the windows that I had helped her fill with petunias, and marigolds at the white picket fence that Thomas had installed himself. This was supposed to be a happy home. This was supposed to be where my first grandchild would be born, would take their first steps, would celebrate birthdays and holidays. This was supposed to be the beginning of the next chapter of our family, but according to Thomas, there was no grandchild. There had never been a grandchild, and Rebecca had been lying to all of us for 7 months. I thought about those 7 months, really thought about them with clear eyes. For the first time, Rebecca had announced the pregnancy at a family dinner. She had glowed with that special radiance that everyone always talks about with pregnant women. Her belly had grown slowly at first, then more noticeably month by month. Until now, in her supposed 7th month, she looked full and round and ready to pop. Soon we had talked about baby names, argued playfully about whether the nursery should be yellow or green or white. Discussed whether she would go back to work after the baby was born or take an extended maternity leave. She had eaten pickles and ice cream, complained about morning sickness and swollen ankles, put her hand on her belly and said, "Oh, the baby's kicking want to feel," and I had put my hand on her stomach and waited and never actually felt anything. But Rebecca always laughed and said, "The baby just moved. Oh, you just missed it. Maybe next time." and I had believed her, had never questioned, had never suspected, had never thought for even 1 second that my daughter-in-law was lying, that she was wearing a fake belly, that she was performing an elaborate deception for reasons I couldn't begin to understand now that I really thought about. It really examined those 7 months with clear, unclouded eyes. I realized I had never actually felt the baby kick, never seen any ultrasound pictures, except for one grainy photo from the supposed first appointment that Rebecca had kept on her. Phone never gone to any of the follow-up appointments, because Rebecca always said her doctor preferred that she come alone, preferred privacy, preferred not to have too many people in the exam room. It's a small office, she had explained, and Dr. Patterson is a bit old-fashioned about these things, and I had accepted that, had thought it was a little odd, but not suspicious, not impossible, just one of those quirky things that some doctors prefer, and now I realized that was probably because there was no Dr. Patterson, no appointments, no ultrasounds, no baby, nothing, just Rebecca alone in her car for an hour every month, supposedly, at a doctor's office, but actually doing what, going where? Buying more padding for her fake belly, practicing her lies, planning whatever she was planning. I got out of my car, my legs feeling weak and shaky, and walked up to the front door. I had a key. Thomas had given me a copy years ago for emergencies. This certainly qualified as an emergency. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. "Rebecca," I called out, "are you home?" The house was silent, too silent, the kind of silence that feels thick and heavy, like it's pressing down on you. I walked through the living room. Everything was neat and tidy, not a thing out of place. Magazines stacked on the coffee table, throw pillows arranged just so on the couch-framed photos on the mantel, including one from Thomas and Rebecca's wedding 4 years ago. Both of them smiling radiantly, arms around each other, looking like they had their whole lives ahead of them, looking like nothing could ever go wrong. The kitchen was equally spotless, dishes put away, counters wiped clean. No evidence that anyone had eaten breakfast there that morning. No evidence that anyone was home. I climbed the stairs to the second floor, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. "Rebecca," I called again, my voice sounding too loud in the quiet house. "Are you here?" I checked the master bedroom, empty. The bed was made perfectly. Hospital corners tucked tight, decorative pillows arranged just so, and then I saw the closet door standing open. I walked over slowly, my hands trembling, and looked inside. Women's clothes on one side, men's clothes on the other, shoes lined up neatly. On the floor, and then on the top shelf, partially hidden behind a stack of folded sweaters, I saw it a large, clear plastic storage bag, and inside it was the belly. Thomas had been right. It was there, it was real. Or rather, it was fake, but it was really there. I reached up and pulled it down my hands, shaking so badly I almost dropped it. The bag crinkled as I opened it and pulled out the prosthetic. It was made of soft foam skin, colored with a slight texture that mimicked real skin. There were straps to hold it in place around the torso, and when I held it up to my own body in the mirror, it looked disturbingly realistic. It looked exactly like a 7-month pregnant belly. It looked exactly like what Rebecca had been wearing. I dropped it, like it had burned me. It fell to the floor with a soft thud, and I stood there staring at it, trying to understand, trying to make sense of this, trying to figure out why. Why would Rebecca do this? Why would anyone do this? What could possibly drive a person to fake a pregnancy, to lie to her husband, to lie to her family, to go to such elaborate lengths to maintain this deception for 7 months? And more importantly, what was she planning to do when she supposedly reached 9 months, when everyone expected her to give birth to a baby that didn't exist? What was the end game here? What was the plan? And suddenly I remembered what Thomas had said about the garden, about Rebecca digging in the garden almost every night for 2 months about something buried out there, something bad, and I felt sick. I felt dizzy. I felt like I was going to vomit, because there are only so many reasons why someone would dig in their backyard in the middle of the night, and none of them are good. I put the fake belly back in the plastic bag, put the bag back on the shelf exactly where I had found it, and went back downstairs. I walked through the kitchen to the back door and stepped out into the yard. It was a cold, gray November morning, the kind of day where the sky is low and heavy and threatening rain. The backyard was actually quite beautiful. Or it had been. Rebecca loved. Gardening had spent hours out here, planting flowers and shrubs and creating little pathways with decorative stones. There was a small vegetable garden where she grew tomatoes and peppers in the summer, a bird bath that attracted cardinals and blue jays, a wooden bench under a trellis covered in dormant wisteria vines, and at the far end of the property near the back fence was an old shed, and beside it a massive oak tree that had to be at least 100 years old. I walked toward that oak tree, my feet crunching on frost-covered grass, my breath making clouds in the cold air. And as I got closer, I saw what Thomas had been talking about. Behind the shed, partially hidden in the shadow of the oak tree, was an area, maybe 6 feet by 4 feet, where the ground looked different. The grass was patchy and thin, and the earth itself looked darker, newer, disturbed. Someone had definitely been digging here, and recently I stood there staring at that patch of disturbed earth, feeling my stomach twist with dread, feeling every instinct in my body scream at me to leave, to get back in my car, to drive away, to call the police, to let professionals handle this, because there are only so many things you bury in your backyard. And most of them are bad, most of them are very bad, but I couldn't move. I stood frozen, staring at that dark earth, thinking about Rebecca, thinking about the fake pregnancy, thinking about my son lying in a hospital bed with broken bones, thinking about the lies, the deception, the elaborate performance, and the question that kept echoing in my mind over and over: what if there really had been a baby? What if Rebecca had been pregnant at some point? What if something had happened to that baby? What if that's what was buried here? No, I whispered to myself. No, that's insane. That's impossible. Rebecca wouldn't. She couldn't. But I didn't really know that. Did I? I didn't really know Rebecca at all. I realized I didn't know what she was capable of. I didn't know what could drive someone to fake a pregnancy. I didn't know anything, and I had to know. I had to see what was buried here. I had to understand what was happening in my family. So I walked to the shed, opened the creaking door, and found a shovel hanging on the wall beside rakes and gardening tools and bags of potting soil. I took the shovel even though my hands were shaking, even though my heart was racing, even though every rational part of my brain was screaming that this was a bad idea, that I should call the police, that I should let professionals handle this. But I couldn't wait. I couldn't not know. I had to see. I walked back to the disturbed patch of earth, drove the shovel into the ground, and it sank easily. The earth was soft, recently turned. I began to dig, throwing shovelful after shovelful of dark soil aside, my breath coming in ragged gasps, my arms burning with effort, sweat running down my face. Despite the cold, my mind was racing. What am I going to find? What if it's something terrible? What if it's what I think it is? What if Rebecca? What if she? And then the shovel hit something solid, something that made a dull, hollow sound. I froze my heart, hammering my hands so slick with sweat I could barely hold the shovel. I dug more carefully now around the edges of whatever I had hit, clearing away the soil inch by inch, and slowly a shape emerged, rectangular, wooden, like a box, like a small coffin. Oh God, oh God, oh God, I was hyperventilating now. Couldn't catch my breath. Couldn't think straight. Couldn't believe what I was seeing. I cleared more dirt away until I could see the whole thing. It was definitely a wooden box, maybe 3 feet long, 1.5 feet wide, a foot deep, roughly the size of an infant. I felt tears streaming down my face, felt my stomach heave, felt the world tilt and spin around me. This couldn't be happening. This wasn't real. This had to be a nightmare. But the box was real. The dirt under my fingernails was real. The cold biting wind was real. The fear choking me was real. I dug my fingers under the edges of the box and lifted. It wasn't very heavy. Thank God. It wasn't very heavy. That would have been worse somehow if it had been heavy, if it had weight. If it had felt like it was full of, but I couldn't think about. That couldn't let my mind go there. Not yet. Not until I knew for sure. I carried the box out from behind the shed, set it down on the grass in the pale gray light. I knelt beside it, my knees sinking into the cold, wet ground, my hands hovering over the clasp that held it closed. I didn't want to open it. I wanted to run, wanted to leave, wanted to pretend I had never found it, never dug it up, never seen it. But I had to. I had to know. I had to see what Rebecca had buried, what my daughter-in-law had hidden, what secret she had been keeping while pretending to be pregnant, while lying to everyone, while deceiving my son. I undid the clasp. My fingers, clumsy and numb, lifted the lid and looked inside. Dolls. The box was full of dolls. Baby dolls. The kind that look eerily realistic, with painted faces and tiny fingers and toes and rosebud mouths. There were 5 of them, arranged carefully, each one wrapped in a small blanket, each, one positioned like it was sleeping, like it was peaceful, like it was dead, and every single one of them had been destroyed, mutilated, disfigured. One had its arms torn off, another had deep gouges carved into its face, a third had been decapitated, its head lying beside its body. The 4th had its stomach ripped open, stuffing pulled out, scattered around it. The 5th, and this one made me recoil in horror, had what looked like burn marks all over its body, like someone had held a lighter to. It had melted its plastic skin, had watched it bubble and blacken, and Cherry slammed the lid shut, scrambled backward, my hand over my mouth trying not to vomit, my vision swimming with black spots. This was sick, this was disturbed, this was the work of someone who was not okay, who was very much not okay. Rebecca had buried these dolls, had mutilated them, had destroyed them, had hidden them in the garden. And I understood now with terrible clarity. These dolls represented babies, represented the baby she was pretending to carry, represented children she couldn't have or didn't want or had lost or I didn't know. I didn't understand. But what I did know was that my daughter-in-law was deeply troubled, was capable of violence even if it was just violence against inanimate objects, was living in some kind of delusion or fantasy that had spiraled completely out of control. And my son had discovered her secret, had confronted her, had tried to get away from her, and had nearly died in the process. He heard a sound behind me, a footstep on the gravel path, and I spun around. Rebecca stood there maybe 20 feet away, still wearing her pajamas, a long nightgown that concealed her fake pregnant belly. Her hair was messy, unwashed. Her face was pale, drawn. Her eyes were red-rimmed like she hadn't slept, and when she saw me kneeling beside the box, beside the hole I had dug beside her, buried secrets, her expression didn't change, didn't show surprise or anger or fear. Nothing, just blank. Emptiness. Like looking at a mannequin, like looking at something that only resembled a person. "Margaret," she said in a flat, emotionless voice, "what are you doing in my backyard?" I stood up slowly, my legs shaky, my heart pounding. "Rebecca," I said, trying to keep my voice calm, trying to sound reasonable, even though I was terrified. "Thomas is in the hospital. He was in a car accident last night. I've been trying to call you. Where have you been?" "I know," she said, still in that flat, dead voice. "I heard the sirens. I knew he survived, Rebecca. What do you mean? You knew he survived. There were you?" "He found out." She interrupted, her voice still eerily calm. "He found the belly. He wasn't supposed to find it, not yet. Not until I was ready. But he went snooping, went through my things, found what I'd been hiding, and he confronted me, accused me, called me crazy, called me sick, said he was going to tell everyone, going to expose me, going to have me committed, and I couldn't let that happen. Couldn't let him ruin everything, so I had to make sure he understood, had to make him see that I wasn't crazy, that this was all necessary, that this was the only way. "Rebecca." "What are you saying? What did you do to Thomas?" "Nothing," she said, but the way she said it, the flatness, the lack of emotion made my blood run cold. He did that to himself, got in his car, drove away like a maniac. Wasn't my fault he crashed, wasn't my fault, he almost died, he made his choice. I looked at this woman I had known. For 4 years, this woman who had married my son, who had seemed so normal, so sweet, so perfect, and I realized I had never known her at all, had never seen beneath the surface, had never questioned the mask she wore. "Rebecca," I said carefully, "why did you fake the pregnancy? Why did you lie to everyone?" She looked past me at the open box, at the mutilated dolls, and something flickered across her face. Then something that might have been pain, or grief, or rage. I couldn't tell because it was gone, as quickly as it came. "Do you know what it's like?" She asked, to want something so badly that you can feel it burning inside you, to want to be a mother more than anything in the world, to lie awake at night imagining what your baby will look like, what they'll sound like, what they'll smell like, to dream about holding them, feeding them, watching them grow, and then to know, to absolutely know that you can never have, that can never experience it, can never be a real mother because your body is broken, because something inside you doesn't work right, because you're defective. "Rebecca," I whispered, "are you saying you can't have children?" She laughed then, but it wasn't a real laugh. It was bitter, harsh, broken. "They took it from me." She said they cut it out when I was 17. Ovarian cancer. They said we have to remove everything. They said you'll be alive. They said, as if being alive is the same thing as living, as if existence, without the ability to create life, is really living at all. They took my ovaries, my uterus, everything that makes you a woman, everything that matters, and they told me I should be grateful. Grateful to be alive, grateful to survive when they stole my entire future, stole my chance to be a mother, stole everything I wanted, everything I was supposed to be. "Rebecca, I'm so sorry. I had no idea you never told us. You never told Thomas." "I don't tell anyone," she said, "because then they look at you different. Treat you like you're broken, like you're less than, like you're not a real woman. And I couldn't stand that. Couldn't stand pity. Couldn't stand people feeling sorry for me. So I pretended. I pretended I was normal, that I could have children someday, that there was nothing wrong with me. And when Thomas proposed, when we got married, he didn't know, never suspected, never asked the right questions, and I thought maybe I could keep pretending forever. Maybe I could just never bring up having kids. Maybe he would forget. Maybe he would be satisfied with just the two of us. But he didn't forget, did he? I said gently. He wanted children. He talked about starting a family. "Yes," she hissed, and the flatness was gone from her voice, now replaced with anger, with pain, with something wild and desperate. He talked about it constantly, talked about how many kids he wanted, what we'd name them, how he couldn't wait to be a father, how excited you would be to be a grandmother, and every conversation was like a knife twisting in my gut, reminding me of what I couldn't give him, reminding me that I was broken, that I was failing him, that eventually he would figure it out, would leave me, would find someone whole, someone who could give him what he wanted. So I had to do something, had to buy more time, had to make him believe we were having a baby, had to make everyone believe it, and maybe if I pretended, long enough if I wore the belly, if I acted pregnant, if I convinced everyone, including myself, maybe the wanting would stop, maybe the pain would stop, maybe I could feel normal for a little while. "So you faked the pregnancy?" I said yes, she said simply. I researched it, found websites that sell pregnancy prosthetics, bought the best, most realistic one I could find, bought maternity clothes, learned how to walk like a pregnant woman, talk like a pregnant woman, complain about the right symptoms, and I was good at it. I was so good. Everyone believed me. Even Thomas, even you, even my coworkers, everyone thought I was really pregnant, really carrying a baby, and for 7 months I felt happy, I felt normal. I felt like I was finally the person I was supposed to be. "But Rebecca," I said, "what were you planning to do when you got to 9 months, when everyone expected you to give birth? You couldn't fake that forever." She looked at me, and her eyes were empty again, dead again. "I had a plan," she said. Flatly, I had it all figured out. "What plan? What were you going to do?" She walked closer to the box, knelt beside it, opened the lid and looked down at the destroyed dolls. "I was going to say the baby died," she said softly. "A stillbirth, a cord accident, a complication, something tragic, something no one could have predicted, and everyone would feel sorry for me, would comfort me, would let me grieve like a real mother, and maybe that grief, maybe mourning a baby that never existed, maybe that would fill the hole inside me. Maybe that would be enough, Rebecca. That's insane, that's cruel. You can't make everyone go through the trauma of losing a baby just so you can process your own grief. Why not?" she snapped, looking up at me with sudden fury. "Why do their feelings matter more than mine? Why does everyone else get to have babies and families and futures, and I have to just accept that? I got cheated, accept that my body betrayed me, accept that I'll never be a mother. It's not fair. It's not right. And I needed something. Needed some way to feel like a mother, even if it was just pretending, even if it was just a lie. And these," she gestured to the dolls. "These were practice. I bought them one for each month of the fake pregnancy. And I took care of them, held them, talked to them, pretended they were real. And when the pretending got too hard, when reality crashed back in, I hurt them, I destroyed them. Because if I can't have a real baby, if I can't be a real mother, then why should they exist? Why should anything exist?" I felt sick listening to her, felt horror and pity and fear all mixed together. "Rebecca, you need help, professional help. What you're describing is not healthy, is not normal, is dangerous. You need therapy. You need medication. I don't need anything," she interrupted, standing up now, her voice rising. "I need everyone to stop telling me what I need. I need people to understand that I'm not crazy, that this wasn't hurting anyone, that it was just a harmless fantasy, a way to cope, a way to survive, and Thomas ruined it. Thomas couldn't just let me have this one thing, couldn't just play along, couldn't just pretend a little longer. He had to confront me, had to accuse me, had to threaten me, had to try to expose me, and I couldn't let that happen. Rebecca, what did you do to his car?" "Nothing," she said too quickly. "I didn't touch his car, but you wanted to." I said, watching her face, "You wanted him to stop. You wanted him to go away so you could continue the lie." She didn't answer, but I saw the truth in her eyes, saw the flicker of guilt, or maybe not guilt, maybe satisfaction, maybe relief. "I need to call the police," I said quietly. "I need to tell them everything they need to know about this, about the fake pregnancy, about these dolls, about whatever happened before Thomas crashed." "No," Rebecca said, and there was steel in her voice now. "You're not calling anyone, because if you do, if you tell anyone, I'll tell them you're lying. I'll tell them you're having a mental breakdown, that you're jealous of my pregnancy, that you tried to attack me, that you're unstable, and who do you think they'll believe, the grieving pregnant daughter-in-law or the hysterical mother-in-law who's digging in people's backyards, making wild accusations? Rebecca, please, I need you to think about what you're doing. Think about Thomas. He's in the hospital. He almost died. He deserves the truth. Thomas," she spat his name, like it was poison. "Thomas betrayed me. He promised to love me in sickness and health, for better or worse, and the first time I'm not perfect. The first time he discovers something wrong with me, he calls me crazy, tries to leave me, tries to expose me, some husband, some love. I'm going to the hospital." I said, backing away slowly. "I'm going to talk to Thomas, and then we're going to figure this out as a family. We're going to get you help. There are therapists who specialize in infertility trauma who can help you process what happened. To you, who can teach you healthy coping mechanisms. You don't have to do this alone, Rebecca. You don't have to keep lying. You're not going anywhere," she said. And she reached into the pocket of her nightgown and pulled out a knife, a kitchen knife, with a long blade that caught the pale morning light. My heart stopped. "Margaret," She said, her voice calm again, eerily calm. I can't let you leave. I can't let you tell anyone. I've worked too hard, maintained this lie for too long, sacrificed too much. And if you try to leave, if you try to tell anyone, I'll have to stop you. I'll have to make sure you can't ruin this. Rebecca, put the knife down, I said, trying to keep my voice steady, trying not to show fear. You don't want to hurt me. I'm Thomas's. Mother, I'm family. I've always tried to be good to you, tried to support you, family. She laughed, that awful broken laugh again. You were never my family. You were just one more person. I had to perform for one more person. I had to convince one more person, judging me, measuring me, waiting for me to slip up, to fail, to prove that I wasn't good enough for your precious son. Well, guess what, Margaret? I'm not good enough. I'm broken. I'm damaged. I'm empty inside. And there's nothing you or anyone can do to fix that. So I might as well finish what I started. Might as well see this through to the end. She took a step toward me, the knife held loosely in her hand. I looked around, desperate for an escape, for something to defend myself with. The shed was behind me, but I'd have to turn my back on Rebecca to run to it. The house was too far. I'd never make it before she caught me. My phone was in my pocket, but I couldn't call for help, not with her standing right there watching me. My only option was to talk, to keep her talking. To hope someone would come, to hope a neighbor would look out their window and see us. To hope that somehow this situation would resolve without violence. Rebecca, I said, please think about this. If you hurt me, it's over. Everything is over. You'll go to jail. Thomas will know the truth. Everyone will know the truth. Is that what you want? Good, she said. Let them know. Let everyone know that I'm sick, that I'm broken, that I can't have children. Let them see what their pity and their concern and their expectations did to me. Let them understand that this is their fault for making me feel like I had to be a mother to be worthwhile, for making me feel like my value as a woman is directly tied to my ability to reproduce. She took another step closer, and I took a step back, my heel catching on something. The box of dolls. I stumbled, nearly fell, caught myself, and Rebecca lunged forward, and I did the only thing I could think of. I screamed as loud as I could, screamed for help, screamed, hoping someone would hear, hoping someone would call the police, hoping someone would save me. And Rebecca stopped, frozen mid-lunge, looking shocked, like she couldn't believe I had actually screamed like she thought I would. Just stand there quietly and let her threaten me. And in that moment of hesitation, I ran. I ran toward the house, toward the back door, my lungs burning, my heart hammering, and I heard Rebecca behind me, heard her footsteps on the grass, heard her yelling, "Wait, stop, come back." But I didn't stop. I kept running. Crashed through the back door into the kitchen, grabbed my phone from my pocket and dialed 911 with shaking fingers. The operator answered on the second ring. 911. What's your emergency? I need help. I gasped, struggling to breathe, struggling to form words. I'm at 47 Maple Street. My daughter-in-law, she has a knife. She tried to attack me. Please send someone. Please. And I could hear Rebecca coming through the back door, could hear her calling my name. Margaret, please. You don't understand. I wasn't really going to hurt you. I just wanted to scare you, wanted to make you understand. But I didn't listen. I ran through the living room to the front door, fumbled with the lock, my hands shaking so badly I could barely turn it, and finally got it open. Ran out into the street just as a police car came around the corner, lights flashing. Someone must have heard my screams, must have called 911 before I did. Thank God. Thank God, thank God. The police. Officers got out of their car, hands on their weapons. Ma'am, are you all right? One of them called, a young officer with kind eyes, and I pointed back at the house. My daughter-in-law, Rebecca. She's inside. She has a knife. She's not well. She needs help. The officers approached the house cautiously, one of them speaking into his radio requesting backup. And I stood there on the sidewalk, shaking, crying, unable to believe what had just happened, unable to process that Rebecca, the sweet, kind woman I had welcomed into my family, had just threatened me with a knife, had been living this elaborate lie for 7 months, had buried mutilated dolls in her garden, had nearly destroyed my son. More police cars arrived within minutes, and an ambulance. And neighbors started coming out of their houses, drawn by the commotion, by the flashing lights, by the drama unfolding on their quiet suburban street. I watched as the officers entered the house, weapons drawn, calling for Rebecca to come out with her hands up, and I waited, standing there in the cold November morning, still in the clothes I had thrown on hours ago, when the hospital called, still covered in dirt from digging in the garden, still shaking from fear and adrenaline and shock, and after what felt like hours, but was probably only 10 minutes, the officers emerged with Rebecca in handcuffs. She wasn't struggling, wasn't fighting, was just walking calmly between them, her face blank, her eyes empty, like she had retreated somewhere, deep inside herself, somewhere where none of this was real, where she was still pregnant, where her lies hadn't been exposed, where her world hadn't collapsed. As they put her in the back of the police car, she looked at me one last time and mouthed the words, "I'm sorry." But I didn't know if she was sorry for threatening me, or sorry for getting caught, or sorry for the years of lies, or sorry for being broken in a way she couldn't fix. And I realized it didn't matter what she was sorry for, because sorry couldn't undo what she had done, couldn't erase the trauma, couldn't heal. My son couldn't restore the trust that had been shattered. A detective approached me, an older woman with gray hair and a no-nonsense expression. "Mrs. Harrison." "I'm Detective Rodriguez. I need to ask you some questions about what happened here," and I told her everything, told her about the phone call from the hospital, about finding the fake pregnancy belly, about digging up the dolls, about Rebecca's confession, about the infertility, about the knife, about running for my life. And as I talked, the detective's expression grew more and more concerned. "Mrs. Harrison," she said, "when I finished, we're going to need you to come to the station to give an official statement, but first I need to show you something." She led me back into the house, back to the master bedroom and to the closet where I had found the fake belly. She pulled out boxes from the top shelf, boxes I hadn't seen before, boxes filled with more baby dolls. Dozens of them, some intact, some destroyed, and journals, notebooks filled with handwriting that I recognized as Rebecca's. The detective opened one of the journals and showed me pages and pages of entries dated over the past 2 years, entries that grew increasingly dark, increasingly disturbed, increasingly detached from reality. Today I bought the first belly Rebecca had written. It feels strange wearing it, but also right. Like this is who I was always meant to be. Like I'm finally becoming myself. And then later, Thomas touched my belly. Today asked if he could feel the baby kick. I said the baby was sleeping. He looked so happy, so proud. I hate lying to him, but I can't tell him the truth. Can't let him know I'm empty, inside, can't let him see how broken I am. And then months later, I destroyed another doll today, ripped its arms off, felt good, felt like I was taking back control, felt like I was punishing the universe for what it did to me. Sometimes I think about hurting real things, real people. But I won't. I would never. I just need this outlet. Just need to pretend for a little longer. I felt sick, reading her words, seeing her mental state deteriorate on the page, seeing how long this had been building, how many warning signs there had been that no one had noticed. Mrs. Harrison, Detective Rodriguez said gently, "I think your daughter-in-law has been experiencing a severe psychological break, likely related to untreated trauma from her cancer diagnosis and infertility. We'll be getting her a psychiatric evaluation. But based on what I'm seeing here, this has been escalating for quite some time. She's going to need intensive treatment, probably inpatient care for a while." "What about Thomas?" I asked. "What about my son?" "He's been living with her for years. He married her, thinking she was one person, and she turned out to be someone completely different. He's going to need support." The detective said, "Therapy, probably for both of you. This kind of betrayal, this kind of deception, it leaves scars. But Mrs. Harrison, you did the right thing, coming here, checking the garden, calling 911 if you hadn't. Rebecca might have continued down this path, might have hurt herself. or someone else. You may have saved her life, even if it doesn't feel that way right now. I went back to the hospital after giving my statement at the police station. I was exhausted, emotionally drained, covered in dirt. But I needed to see Thomas, needed to tell him everything, needed to make sure he understood. This wasn't his fault. He was awake when I got there, sitting up in bed, looking at his phone, and when he saw me, his face crumpled. "Mom," he said, "what happened? I saw the news. Rebecca was arrested. They're saying something about assault, about a mental health crisis. Is it true?" I sat down beside his bed, took his hand, and told him everything about finding the fake belly, about the dolls in the garden, about Rebecca's infertility, about her confession, about the knife, about barely escaping. And as I talked, I watched my son's face cycle through every emotion: shock, disbelief, horror, grief, anger, and finally a deep, profound sadness. "I loved her, Mom," he said. When I finished, tears streaming down his face, "I really loved her. I thought we were building a life together. Thought we were going to have a family. Thought she was my person, and it was all a lie. All of it. Every moment of our marriage was based on deception. And I didn't see it, didn't suspect, didn't know. How could I not know, Thomas?" I said, squeezing his hand. "This isn't your fault. Rebecca is sick. She's been sick for a long time, probably since before you met her, and she hid it from you. Hid it from everyone. She's a very good liar, a very good actress, but that doesn't mean what you felt for her wasn't real. Doesn't mean the love wasn't genuine, even if the circumstances were false. But how do I come back from this?" he asked. "How do I trust anyone again? How do I believe what people tell me when my own wife lied to me about something so fundamental? How do I move forward?" I didn't have an answer for him, didn't have words that could make it better, could fix the damage, could erase the pain. All I could do was hold his hand and be there and promise him that we would get through this together, that he wouldn't have to face it alone, that our family, even though it looked very different than we thought it did, was still strong, was still whole, was still there for him. And over the next few days, as Thomas recovered from his physical injuries and began processing the emotional trauma, the full story emerged. Rebecca had been diagnosed with ovarian cancer. At 17, had undergone a complete hysterectomy, had been told she would never be able to have biological children, and had spent the next decade hiding that fact from everyone, including her family, including Thomas. She had been seeing a therapist briefly in her early 20s, but had stopped going, had convinced herself she could handle it, could move on, could live a normal life, despite the grief and trauma she carried. And then she met Thomas, fell in love, got married, and suddenly found herself in a relationship with a man who wanted children, who talked constantly about starting a family, who had this vision of their future that included kids and grandkids, and Rebecca couldn't bear to tell him the truth, couldn't bear to disappoint him, couldn't bear to lose him. So she started planning the fake pregnancy, started buying the prosthetics, started building the lie, and for 7 months she maintained it, convinced. Everyone lived in this elaborate fantasy where she was carrying a baby, where she was going to be a mother, where everything was going to work out somehow. And when Thomas found the fake belly, when he confronted her, when her carefully constructed world started to collapse, she panicked, couldn't think rationally, couldn't see any way out except to double down on the lies, to threaten anyone who might expose her, to protect her secret at all costs, even if that cost was her freedom, her marriage, her sanity. The psychiatric evaluation confirmed what we already suspected. Rebecca was suffering from complicated grief, unresolved trauma from her cancer diagnosis, and a delusional disorder that had been slowly worsening over years. She was remanded to a psychiatric hospital for intensive treatment, and the judge ruled that she was not competent to stand trial for assault, which was probably for the best because punishing her wouldn't fix her, wouldn't address the root causes of her breakdown, wouldn't help anyone heal. Thomas filed for divorce, and though it was painful, though he grieved the loss of the woman he thought he knew, He also began to understand that he couldn't save her, couldn't fix her, could only take care of himself and start rebuilding his life without her as for me. I spent a lot of time thinking about warning signs, about red flags, about all the little moments over the years where maybe I should have seen that something was wrong with Rebecca, but I realized that's not how deception works. That's not how lies operate. People who are good at lying, are good at making you believe them, are good at hiding their pain, are good at performing normalcy. And Rebecca had been performing for so long, had been hiding for so many years that even the people closest to her had no idea what was really going on inside her mind. So I stopped blaming myself, stopped looking for signs I missed, and instead focused on healing, focused on supporting Thomas, focused on processing my own trauma from that morning in the garden when I thought my daughter-in-law might kill me. Months passed. Thomas healed physically and began healing emotionally with the help of a good therapist and a support group for people who had experienced betrayal in their relationships. He moved out of the house he had shared with Rebecca, sold it, bought a small apartment downtown, started over, and slowly, very slowly, he began to trust again, began to open himself up to the possibility of future relationships, future happiness, future family. Even if it looked different than he had imagined, Rebecca remained in the psychiatric hospital, making slow progress in her treatment. And though Thomas didn't visit her, didn't speak to her, did maintain some contact. Through her doctors wanted to know she was getting help, wanted to know she was improving, even though he couldn't be part of her life anymore. Even though their marriage was over, even though everything had changed, I went to therapy too, processed my own trauma from that day, my own feelings of betrayal and confusion and fear, and I learned that sometimes people we love are hiding things we can't see. Sometimes the people we think we know are strangers. Sometimes the families we build are more fragile than we realize. But I also learned that we're stronger than we think, that we can survive things we never imagined we'd face, that we can rebuild after everything falls apart, and that sometimes the hardest part of loving someone is accepting that you can't save them, can't fix them, can only love them from a distance and hope they find their way to healing on their own. Year after that terrible November morning, Thomas called me Mom. He said, I have some news. I met someone, her name is Lisa. She's a teacher. She's kind and honest, and she knows everything about Rebecca, about what happened, about my trust issues, about all of it. And she's patient with me. She understands that I need to take things slow, that I need time to rebuild my ability to trust. And Mom, I think I might be falling in love with her. And I cried tears of joy, tears of relief, tears of gratitude that my son, who had been through so much, who had suffered such profound betrayal, was giving himself permission to love again, to hope again, to believe that not everyone would hurt him, that not everyone would lie, that there were still good people in the world worth taking a risk for. I met Lisa a few weeks later at a quiet lunch at Thomas's apartment. She was exactly as he described her, kind, warm, honest, with an openness in her eyes that Rebecca had never had, with a straightforwardness that was refreshing after years of deception. And when I watched her, with Thomas, watched how gentle she was with him, how patient, how understanding I felt. Hope, real genuine hope, that my son was going to be okay, that he was going to have the life he deserved, the family he wanted, the happiness that had been stolen from him by Liesa's for Rebecca. I heard through her doctors that she was making progress, was finally confronting the trauma of her cancer diagnosis, was learning to grieve the children she would never have, was developing healthy coping mechanisms to deal with her infertility, was taking medication that helped stabilize her moods and her thoughts. And though she would probably never fully recover, though she would carry the scars of what she had done for the rest of her life, she was at least trying, was at least facing the truth, was at least attempting to heal, and I hoped for her sake that she would find peace someday, would find a way to live with her limitations, would find meaning and purpose even without the children. She had wanted so desperately 2 years after that November morning, I got another phone call, this time from Thomas, this time with good news. "Mom," he said, his voice excited, nervous, happy. "Lisa and I are getting married. And there's something else, Mom. We're going to have a baby. Lisa is pregnant. We found out yesterday. And this time it's real. This time it's true. This time. There are no lies, no deceptions, no fake bellies, just a real baby, a real future, a real chance at the family I always wanted, and I cried again. But this time, it was pure joy, pure relief, pure gratitude that despite everything, despite the trauma and the betrayal and the lies, good things could still happen, that happiness could still exist, that families could heal and rebuild and start over, and that sometimes the darkest moments in our lives lead us to the brightest futures we could never have imagined. When Thomas and Lisa's baby was born, a beautiful, healthy baby girl. They named her Hope Margaret. Hope after me and after the thing we all needed most during those dark months, hope that things would get better, hope that wounds would heal, hope that lies would eventually be replaced by truth, hope that broken families could become whole again in new and unexpected ways. And when I held my granddaughter for the first time, this tiny, perfect, real baby, I thought about Rebecca, about the woman who had wanted so desperately to be a mother that she had destroyed herself and her marriage, trying to fake it, and I felt sad for her, felt compassion for the pain she must have carried, for the loss she must have grieved, for the emptiness she must have felt. And I hoped that wherever she was in her treatment, in her healing, she was finding peace, was learning to live with what she couldn't have, was discovering that being a mother wasn't the only way to have value, wasn't the only way to be complete, wasn't the only way to matter. The house where it all happened was eventually sold to a new family who knew nothing about what had occurred there, about the secrets buried in the garden, about the lies told in those rooms, about the breakdown that happened in that backyard. And I was glad. I was glad that new families would make new memories in that space, that children would play in that garden where I had dug up those horrible dolls, that life would continue, that the darkness of the past would be replaced by the light of the future. And sometimes, when I drive past that house, I think about that terrible morning. Think about digging in the frozen ground. Think about finding those mutilated dolls. Think about Rebecca with the knife. Think about running for my life, and I'm amazed that it's real, that it actually happened, that my life contains this story, this trauma, this darkness. But then I look at my granddaughter, at Hope, at this beautiful, real child who exists, because Thomas found the courage to try again, to love again, to believe again. And I realize that's what life is. It's darkness and light, trauma and healing lies, and truth, pain, and joy all mixed together. And we don't get to choose what happens to us. We don't get to control other people's choices or actions or deceptions, but we do get to choose how we respond. We do get to choose whether we let the darkness win or whether we keep looking for the light, keep hoping for better, keep believing that good things are still possible, even after the worst moments of our lives. The hospital called and told me my son was in an accident, and that phone call led me down a path I never could have imagined. Led me to discover secrets that shattered my understanding of my family, led me to dig up buried dolls in a frozen garden, led me to confront a woman I thought I knew, led me to run for my life, led me through darkness so deep I wasn't sure I would ever find my way out. But it also led me here to this moment, holding my granddaughter, watching my son rebuild his life, seeing hope literally and figuratively bloom in places where there was once only pain. And I'm grateful that we survived, grateful that Thomas found Lisa, grateful that hope exists, grateful that even when everything falls apart, we have the strength to put ourselves back together again. Maybe not in the same shape we were before, maybe not quite as whole, maybe with scars and fractures that will never fully heal, but together, nonetheless, alive, nonetheless, moving forward, nonetheless, choosing hope over despair, choosing truth over lies, choosing light over darkness every single day. So, If you're watching this and you've discovered something about someone you love, something that shatters your understanding of who they are, something that makes you question everything you thought you knew, I want you to know that you're not alone, that betrayal is painful but survivable, that lies hurt, but truth eventually heals, that families can be broken and rebuilt and reimagined in ways that are sometimes even better than before. I want you to know that it's okay to grieve the person you thought they were, to mourn the relationship you thought you had, to feel angry and hurt and confused and lost. But I also want you to know that you will get through this. That time doesn't heal all wounds, but it does make them more bearable. That support from others, whether family or friends or therapists or support groups, can help you carry the weight when it feels too heavy to bear alone. And that eventually, probably sooner than you think, you will find yourself laughing again, loving again, trusting again, maybe more cautiously, maybe more carefully, but genuinely nonetheless. And if you're watching this, and you're the one carrying secrets, the one hiding parts of yourself, the one maintaining lies because you're afraid of being seen as broken or less than or not enough, I want you to know that everyone is broken in some way, that everyone carries pain, that everyone has parts of themselves they wish they could change, and hiding those parts, lying about them, pretending to be someone you're not, only makes the pain worse, only increases the isolation, only deepens the wound. The people who truly love you, the people who are meant to be in your life, will accept you as you are, will love you. Despite your limitations, will stand by you through your struggles. But they can only do that if you let them see you, if you tell them the truth, if you give them the chance to love the real. You, not the performance you think they want to see. And yes, some people might leave, might not understand, might not be able to handle your truth, but those people weren't meant to be in your life anyway. And the ones who stay, the ones who love you, anyway, the ones who show up and support you and help you through the darkness, those are your people. Those are the relationships worth having, worth fighting for, worth being honest. For the hospital called and said, "I thought my son's wife was pregnant." And she wasn't. And that lie, that deception, that elaborate performance led to so much pain, so much trauma, so much damage, but it also led to truth, led to healing, led to my son finding real love, led to my granddaughter being born, led to our family becoming stronger and more honest and more resilient than we ever were before. And for that, despite everything, despite the fear and the pain and the darkness, I'm grateful. Grateful for the journey, grateful for the lessons, grateful for where we ended up, even though I wouldn't wish the path we took on anyone. So thank you. Thank you for listening to this story, for sitting with me through the darkness, for walking with me through the fear, for staying until we reached the light. Thank you for your time, your attention, your compassion. And if this story resonated with you, if it reminded you of your own experiences of betrayal or deception or healing, I would love to hear about it in the comments below. What's your story? What secrets have you uncovered? What lies have you discovered? What healing have you experienced? And how did you find your way back to hope? Share your story. Because someone else watching this might be in the middle of their own darkness, might be struggling with their own betrayal, might need to hear that they're not alone, that others have survived similar pain and come out stronger on the other side. And if you found value in this story, if it moved you or taught you something or simply kept you engaged, I would appreciate it if you would like this video, subscribe to my channel, and share it with others who might need to hear it. There are more stories on my channel, stories about family secrets and hidden truths, and the messy, complicated, beautiful process of healing. And I would love for you to join our community, to be part of this conversation, to add your voice to the chorus of people who have survived and thrived and chosen hope over despair. The hospital called, and everything changed, and I'm grateful for that call. Grateful for the truth it revealed. Grateful for the journey it started. Grateful for where it led. Even though the path was dark and scary and uncertain, because on the other side of that darkness was light, was love, was family, was hope. And that's what I want for you too. wherever you are in your journey, whether you're in the darkness or the light, whether you're just starting to uncover secrets or you're years into your healing. I want you to have hope. I want you to believe that better days are coming. I want you to know that you're stronger than you think, and more resilient than you realize, and capable of surviving things you never imagined you could face. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for caring. And remember, no matter what secrets you're carrying, no matter what lies you've discovered, no matter what betrayals you've experienced, you are not alone. You are not broken beyond repair. You are not unworthy of love and happiness and peace. You are surviving, and that in itself is a victory. So keep going. Keep hoping. Keep choosing light over darkness. Keep choosing truth over lies. Keep choosing love over fear. Because that's how we heal. That's how we survive. That's how we build lives worth living, even after everything falls apart. The hospital called, and I thought my son's wife was pregnant until I saw what she buried in the garden, and what I found. There changed everything. Changed my understanding of family, of truth, of mental illness, of the desperate things people do when they're in pain, of the lies we tell ourselves and others, of the masks we wear, of the performances we give. But most importantly, it taught me about resilience, about healing, about hope, about the incredible strength of the human spirit to survive and rebuild and create beauty, even in the aftermath of destruction. And for that, despite everything, I'm grateful. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.